Tony Caravan. You've been subjected to a highly sophisticated form of propaganda.
It's just what you need, what you don't.
Good morning.
And a bright good morning to you folks. Sorry for jumbling the microphone, but I've adjusted my chair. Something in the back is saying resume, I think. And I couldn't believe it, but yesterday I was going to open my window because the weather was pretty nice. And this is what I heard. That's right. The idiot neighbor on, oh, by the way, the classic shirt. Everything you know is wrong. Get some. Get some. Or maybe I should have, when I say that, get some. Get some.
Good morning, Vietnam.
Yeah. No, I prefer the birds chirping. It's the beginning of the end, folks. As our buddy down under would say, who got banned for life. Got to go to BitChute to see the birdhouse. The microphone is acting up. Yeah, I don't know. I caramba. I'm going to read what I wrote in my description because people don't read the description, but bears repeating and make sure I didn't have any grammatical or spelling errors. Though I did use a yud. That's YA''D. With over 50 consecutive shows and nearly 200 YouTube videos, plus 10 books and 50 beat poetry tracks, you'd think thousands would be viewing these informative and enlightening and fun morning shows. But people just want to see rich YouTubers showing off the things they buy with their YouTube revenue. I'm demonetized, ergo nothing. Back to the garden. And there's some links there to my personal website. And let's see what we can do here. I don't know why. I think, is that a wince? Is that a wince? Or is that just a cringe? Trying to adjust the level of this microphone. This chair will inevitably fall down, but I did get like a padded seat to like kind of raise the Jolly Roger. And we'll see if that works. I have no idea. As far as the weather's concerned, let's see if there's been any overnight major changes. Takes a while for this thing to get active. It's claiming that it's now 48 degrees. Those lying SOBs. Was supposed to stay in the 50s overnight. I unveiled a couple of my poor little baby. It's a Tony Caravan live show. I go through some personal stuff before we get into today's theme. Okay, deal with it. I got an attitude. Yeah, why not? We all got attitudes. It's morning. I'm drinking cold coffee, cold instant coffee. Have you ever heard of that? You see these alien lights back there? Those are alien lights. But I can shut them off. They're gone now. But, yeah, you take like Folgers coffee or something like that. I always get Folgers instant crystals. One way or another, I'm going to get this thing. Hey, Kat, you want to come down here and say hi to the folks? No. You're just curious to see what I'm doing. And now you're going to go hide somewhere. But anyway, for the people who have, good morning, folks, and thanks for coming. Thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate all that. But that's more like the crowd that we have here. It's pretty crazy.
The station for more fun in the sun.
Yeah, this is fun radio. Too bad nobody gets it. Now, let's see. We'll cover up some of the key things. You can build credit. Capital One. I show these for those, handful of people who follow this or followed this thing. This is Capital One now. I guess they get their interest rates are 26.99. Always with the 0.99. Man, am I so tired of that. But this has no annual fee, so that's nice. I'm not interested in credit cards anymore. I got rid of all my credit cards. It's freedom, when you do that. But what you have to do is before you scan your QR code or visit blah, blah, blah. And they send these things in the mail that clearly says it's Capital One. Your pre-qualified offer isn't closed. Okay. So the porch thieves, and you know who the porch thieves are. Yeah, and they got like QR codes and stuff on it. And then whatever this stupid thing is to like make people feel as if there's actually a credit card in there. Things on the outside are getting more and more insane. And what's crazy about it is if you clicked on this for the title card, I'm going to get to that. Yeah, that's a frozen over Earth. And we're going to talk about some stuff, and I'm not going to hold back at all. I'm going to tell you stuff that you have no idea, or you have an idea about it, but nobody's had the nerve to really tell you the truth, or they don't really know the truth. They all just use everybody's, pass around everybody else's information. That's another thing about the internet. That's kind of annoying. This chair pad isn't exactly working like on its own. I don't know if it's the right thing. So, okay, I got to try to be happier here. And
Here's what's happening.
All right. So you'd think a guy who has all of this stuff.
Let's get this show on the road.
Okay. All right. Instant coffee, cold with ice cubes. What do you think of that? You go in the store, you can see some of it sticking around. Well, you can't see it, but it was sticking around the sides just to make sure it's all mixed up. Oh, wow, that chair went way down. The station with more fun in the sun. And it's also
Quality, quantity, and variety.
Rock Flux.
Let's get this show on the road.
Yeah, you could find this on YouTube on my it's called Rock Flux channel. Rock Flux, as if, we're on, I said this yesterday, it's the rock. Remember the third rock from the sun, that show or something? Not that I never watched it, but, the earth is a rock hurling through space, and it's in a state of flux right now. And that's what today's show is going to be about. It's going to be about the end of the world or the beginning of the end. And this has nothing to do with any kind of prophecy or any kind of woo-woo stuff. This has to do with facts. Okay? We talked about consciousness and getting your head together so you can get into the eternal, right? Your immortality, your immortal soul, so to speak. All right? And however, I once posed the concept that I don't know why there's a pop there, because this is a pop screen, which is weird. But, I just can't help it. Get some. Get some. Get some. You remember that movie? Have you gotten your morning show official mug yet? This is the metal one, the camper one. This is the one you need to survive. The smaller one, lightweight. In the back there, you'll see great solar stuff and some of my objects. Yesterday, I charged this thing. This is the radio.
6.5 inches below the normal amount of 0.68 inches for April.
That's the weather service. And I got two. I was listening to it.
1.12 inches below normal.
And there was this red.
7 inches, which is 3.03 inches below normal.
Well, I'm at 50% charge on this thing. This is a weather radio that you could supposedly charge in the sun. I'm going to give it another shot today if there's any sun outside. I don't know if there's going to be any sun outside or not. And of course, that's the big time. Well, there's my book over here, Codex. And that's the thing from Great Solar Stuff that you can plug stuff into. Right there. And this here. I'm viewing everything backwards. My face looks like it's like swollen for some reason. So let's just reduce that. That's like a ceramic heater I got that's only like 240 watts. See, the idea is that when you have something like happened in Texas, where the guys refer to the girls as darling, right? There's all these things when you travel around the country that you learn that the average person just doesn't even know about. Darling, And then, it's one of those things that just, if you said call somebody darling around here, they would just be like, what's, or these SJWs would be like, he's assaulted me. Right. It's like I think in my area now, they're opening up the bars somewhat or something I hear. It's like you couldn't go up to a girl and say, hi, how you doing? In a bar now, because these SJWs would go, he assaulted me. Right. You probably, in some states, you probably go to jail for saying hi to a girl. I think this hurts the women more than it hurts the men, to be honest with you. I mean, it sounds like to me. Your losses, not mine. So it doesn't get sunny around 9 a.m. It goes up to 55, maybe a little bit higher today. But what it's saying is that it's going to be 75 degrees tomorrow, the next day, then 72, then a dip down to 64, but then Saturday's looking like it might get back up to 70. Now, I'm all for that because I got the plants exposed and I'm going to start putting some herbs out in that garden, herbs. And hopefully we're not getting that click because of YouTube's poor. You get these multimillionaires or these people making even six figures who sit around in their little things. They're more concerned about playing games with their little precious. Me precious. Oh, my precious. I have to have me precious with me. Yeah, right. It's a piece of junk. It's a paperweight. Useless garbage. Useless garbage. Let's see here. If we go to YouTube, which was just updated, I don't want to go to YouTube. I want to go to Facebook. Where is it? And we're going to do live. Now, on this Facebook Live, I even look worse than I look now because there's some kind of weird glow on. Because I don't know, the picture, maybe the phone has more of it's the real me. It's the real me. Start live video. Yeah, this is Tony Caravan on Tony Caravan Live. We're live on YouTube's Rock Flux channel. This complete video will be available on Facebook a little bit later on. I could check it out. And here's the scene. Actually, this is my getup. This is you've got like, and over here is the other computer. Can't see much about it. And well, that's the coffee. There's the rest of the room in the distance. And this is me finishing off. So I will see you on the video. Finish. Ending live video. Bing. Next. Post for 30 days. Uploading. Now they say it's live, but it's uploading. Well, let you know when your video has posted. So is it live or is it Memorex? Oh, that's Messenger. I got to watch out for that. I'm not into this YouTube thing or Facebook thing. I quit Facebook like a couple of years ago. And I just came back to post these things on you for YouTube. After my YouTube live video, I guess it's kind of like that. It posts and stays there for 30 days or something. I'll let these things up. This isn't that good. It needs something. I was going to buy nutmeg the other day. And I'm contemplating the idea, what if I put like black cherry? Has anyone put black cherry in coffee? I wonder what that would taste like. So I guess we should get into the show,
This is Metropolitan Police speaking. Metropolitan Police speaking. All persons are warned to stay off the streets. All persons are warned to stay off the streets.
I mean, that's basically what we're dealing with. You would think a guy like me with all this stuff would get more than 1 or 0 viewers, I should say. So this show is the beginning of the end for 2 reasons. All right. One is it's the beginning of the end of life as we've known it, or for multiple levels, but not the one that you think. And it's the beginning of the end where I'm going to start moving into garden videos. So I may or may not do a couple more of these kinds of things, but I think this format's is done. So today will be the beginning of the end. Even though I ordered this extra camera, it's like a web camera, but I think I'm hoping it's one that's going to work on the camera I've set up in the bar. So on those few occasions that I do drink, maybe I'll try to, I'll do some video there and make a total idiot of myself. Right. I mean, what does it really matter? You think about that. I was talking about this thing. That thing down there is a box with like a little ceramic heater I picked up, real cheap one at Walmart. Like $5. It's 240 watts. Now, the thing I have in the back that I kind of shone the light on with the great solar stuff, all right, that Jackery, this particular one's a 200 watter. So what you want to do is you want to go to greatsolarstuff.com and get yourself one of those like 400 watt, 500. I mean, you get 1,000 watt one, which was the ideal, and some solar panels. I mean, I've used this thing and demonstrated this on a video, I don't know, about 2 or 3 weeks ago. If you're interested, go back. That's my previous book. That infinity sign is actually also means was my 8th book. I say I have 10 books because I have a book that's out of print that's laying around here somewhere, but I don't know what it is. But anyway, the idea behind this whole thing is I was talking about Texas, and then I got sidetracked with the Darlin thing. I always try to circle back. If I don't get you today, when I make one of those like get on a tangent and forget to finish it, I'll get you tomorrow. Usually, that's how you have to follow. That's what people should follow these videos. I always answer. I always get. If I miss it on a tangent, I'll come back. But as you know, the polar vortex and like, oh, it was once in 100 years. It's like, yeah, get lost, man. The Earth's been cooling. We're in a cooling cycle. People are living in places, and we're into it now. Okay, people are living in places where people never lived before. Okay, or developments are in places where few people lived before. Okay. Corridors of, traffic, bridges, all this stuff. The infrastructure that the guy with dementia ain't gonna fix. Okay. And because you can't fix the infrastructure without fossil fuels and heavy equipment, as we talk about practically on every show. So how are you going to do that? How are you going to create those jobs? Right? Who's going to run the skid steers, the front end loaders, the excavators, the bulldozers, the huge uke dump trucks, cranes, right? Flatbeds hauling that heavy equipment to sites. That stuff doesn't run on electric. I saw a video yesterday. I had like 10 or 20, it was 20 of these bird killer fails. You know what a bird killer is, right? That's a windmill. All they do is kill birds, get caked up with bugs, catch fire, fall down, and after about 15 years, the electric companies abandon them because it's not worth their while to fix them. And they're sitting there like old, decaying Greek or Roman columns, basically ruins from up to 50 years ago. They started putting these things up in California around 50 years ago. And so they just ruin landscapes, and they're ruining seascapes too. They put them out in the oceans too. But people's electric bills haven't gone down. Remember, if the thing doesn't improve your quality of life, to hell with it. It really doesn't matter. Besides, we're self-healing beings, You know what grace is? Do you know what grace is? You ever hear that term, grace, state of grace? How about Hail Mary full of grace? Do you know what grace is? Grace is like something that actually is a healing, and it builds your immune system, and it helps your immortal soul, which is also what I call consciousness, and what most neuroscientists call consciousness. Because the human brain, as we talked about yesterday and in many other shows, is just a bioelectrical, computational unit for this android body. It's your consciousness, right? Your soul, if you will, your spirit. That's you. That's who you are. You are your consciousness, the person, the you of you. Foolish, silly earthlings. Oh, I'll tell you. Silly earthlings. Yeah, you should have seen this. Munchkin of a moron. Yeah, it's not, I don't know. They're just NPCs, non-player characters. They're just, androids wandering around. Soulless. I call them soulless people. I don't think, you just get on your nerves sometimes. What am I supposed to say? Well, you should love everyone. Love everyone. Well, There's nothing to do with love. That's being annoyed by a moron. It's as bad as the people like talked about a couple of shows ago, and they're that have this tiny little lawn, and they have a $3,000 sit down mower, and they look like a complete idiot. You know. So we're entering a grand solar minimum of biblical proportions. I mean, it's not going to be the day after tomorrow, in our lifetimes, unless you're one of those survivors. But it's questionable about, whether you can survive what's about to happen. And this thing could happen anytime during the next, say, 20, I think they're looking at the next 25 years. A guy named Douglas Vogt, Diehold Foundation, which he makes sure he'll make it out to you. Hey, Dougie boy, it's a 501c3 corporation. So, but no, he's a good guy, and he's done his research, and he's got a whole pile of books out there. And I think he's appeared at one of those things that Davidson puts out from Suspicious Observers. They used to have these conferences. I don't know if they have them anymore. I think he's into some kind of new thing down in somewhere in the Southwest. I don't know specifically. I'm going to be spending more time jumping back into the research and my garden and stuff like that instead of this. I think, in other words, like I read in that description, this noise may bother you or bother me, is the thing that, I've done this, 55 days consecutively live every morning. I've been here for you for the most part for almost 2 hours. And while, it's, I do the silliness, and all of that stuff and the sound effects to, just to have fun, like that, we're cattle on a tax farm, that kind of thing. I agree. It is funny. I think it's funny. But my hands are in the fire. Those are my hands. I think we discovered the mystery of it all. So now let's move this down there. Remember we had that mystery object? So somehow it's reflecting. This screen is reflecting from down here. Very interesting. So I was like hanging out my hands here, twiddling my thumbs or whatever. Very interesting. Now I'll be obsessed with that. Obsession. Will that help? Wow. There's really nothing to see over there. So, you remember that movie, The Day After Tomorrow? Okay. And, the idea was, it was a pretty good... that was the last movie. This darn thing. That was the last movie that I ever saw in a movie theater. That's so whenever that movie came out, that was the last time I was at a movie theater. I wonder, Vincent Vega. Remember from that movie? Vincent Vega. So, it was a good Hollywood production. I mean, they did a fairly decent job on it. You got to admit that. But, it was, it was showbiz. They pushed it to the extreme. They took every possible scenario and threw them all into one. So they happened simultaneously. In fact, let's just see here what year that was. Day After Tomorrow. Day After Tomorrow, based on a 1999 book, 2004 sci-fi action movie. Okay. What's a rutted Rotten Tomatoes give it? 45%. Screw them. They're way off. So 2004. So basically 16, between 16, 17 years ago. Well, probably 17, probably was in production 17, 18 years ago, something like that. You know, time it takes to get a movie out, released. You know, and this corresponds. And if you think, you know, and when was, what was that? What was Al Gore's movie? New Window, Inconvenient, 2006. Okay, now it's coming and putting in, getting into place. So, like, these guys who had this Agenda 21 for the 21st century, it was called Agenda 21. Now it's called Agenda 2030. Man, I'm going to tell you stuff today that you just, you know, you have no idea, or you have heard these things and you might have thought it was just woo woo, tinfoil hat, conspiracy theory, whatever idiotic stuff they programmed into your moronic frickin' brains. All right. So wake up to reality. You're being, you were indoctrinated through the school system and you're being propagandized through the media. Everything you know is wrong. And what you don't know, you don't know. All right. So I'm going to explain this whole thing to you clearly and matter of factually. You know why? Because I know. I know. Well, how do I know? Because unlike you, I have been all around the world in all these key places, and I'm privy to this information. All right. I even had a clearance at one point. Okay. I've talked to the key players. All right. All right. I've worked with people that have been all you know, on site at these places. I know all of this stuff firsthand. It's not from a meme, or I didn't read this on some website or some goofy guy who wears alien masks sometimes, another YouTuber who's making a fortune on YouTube. I don't make a dime on this stuff. And like I say, a lot of these shows I actually lose money on. You know, I buy all this stuff, I prepare all these things, all these products I show you in the back and stuff. I self-publish these books. Nobody buys them. You know, I've done my service to others. You know, I've tried to get this across, and I'm going to give you one last big explanation. And like I say, I'll go to the, to the sources. I don't just talk off the cuff about this stuff. Sorry for yelling. That like gets people too today. People have such thin skin, you know. It's pathetic when you think about it. Oh, he called me a name. He said hello to me. Yeah. It's ridiculous. Social justice warriors. But they're all like, they're the wimpiest people in the world. They're a soy boys. And the women who are part of that are like, pussy used to be a good word, but they're pussies in the pure sense of real wimpy pussies. One wouldn't want to touch that thing with a 10-foot pole. Welcome to YouTube Live, the beginning of the end. This will be a classic. So the Day After Tomorrow comes out in the year 2004, right? And it's a blockbuster movie. Okay, so it, it made the rounds, and I'm sure people bought the DVD. And I believe it's probably still, or unless they swiped it off of, it was on, the various Netflixes or Amazon Primes. I don't know, but I think I saw it there once. I didn't watch it because I'm one of those guys who I don't read a book twice or I don't watch a movie twice, Now that's not, and when I say that, I'll clarify that it's like, unless it's a research book, or, a reference, then I may go back. Like my book, you can read 5 times because there's reference. Sometimes there's some things you might want to know in here. Anyway, just right off the top, I just opened up my book to this line. The idea that in recent years, people have allowed a relatively small number of wannabe journalists, make-believe geeks, and play actors to seize control of the flow of information and entertainment in Western societies and supplant history, fact, and science with identity politics and dangerous Marxist ideologies in a travesty of all that modern civilization has accomplished. Western civilization is dead. They killed it. The United States is over. It's a former United States, as I always say. I forgot to start my show. It's usually like 5:43 a.m. on Eastern Standard Time here in the Mid-Atlantic States, the former United States of America, because we have irreconcilable differences. Watch yesterday's show or the show before that or the show before that if you want to know about that. Let's get back to this main topic now. So the day after tomorrow comes out. Need a breath. Comes out in 2004. Now remember this whole Agenda 21. That's like the UN the same people, the EU, and these people who are involved with like the World Economic Forum, Great Reset, the Davos set that I talk about all the time. The corporatocracy, which for some reason I always put my hand up here and I say, who pull the strings of the marionettes. The politicians and the bureaucrats are all marionettes. Same, and remember, TV is part of the corporatocracy. They're simply the, propaganda wing. All right. So everything you see on TV, they're used car salesmen selling drugs that the FDA approved, and that lawyers will come on TV later on and tell you that and sue the pharmaceutical companies. But the pharmaceutical companies don't care. It's a cost of doing business. They make $1 billion on the drug, and then they kick out $100 million in fines for killing people. They're ahead $900 million. Right. It's like the people tell you, these little kids, and these grown adults, oh, don't put, those, make sure you take apart those plastic things. Don't use plastic straws and stuff because they're going to hurt the whole birds and they're going to get in things in the ocean. And as I've said before, well, what the hell's a straw or a 6-pack plastic top thing doing in the ocean? How the heck did it get there? Because the governor of California and the governor of New York and the governor of New Jersey basically allows people to dump garbage in the ocean. And they just give them a fine. So in other words, it's a cost of doing business. They don't care. Right? So these so-called environmental coastal states are the ones that are polluting the oceans. Now, the Chinese do it too. The Chinese used to take our garbage and go and sift through it for recycling. And I guess the CCP would be looking for stuff like that thing I tore up. I mean, it's a crazy world. And when you've got like 1.5 billion people and they're basically slaves to the Chinese Communist Party, you could have millions of them sifting through garbage trying to put together things so that they could, get involved and find anything they want to. but there was too much garbage, so they started dumping it in the ocean. And then you have Fukushima that went off in Japan, which nobody really still talks about anymore. It's basically destroyed every bit of salmon. Was the most healthiest thing for somebody to eat. Okay. They still sell stuff called wild caught salmon. I buy it every now and then, but people have almost taken Geiger counters to like boxes of that. That's how radioactive that shit is. Pardon my language. So, Agenda 21. That was 21 stood for the 21st century. Okay. This goes back to, the 90s. These people, remember all of the things that unfolded in the 21st century from 9/11 on through. They were all like orchestrated, and that was all planned, like the Patriot Act, and that was already on paper, already, through meetings, presentations, back in the 90s. All right. This is old. They were just waiting there on the shelf. Okay, 9/11 happened. Okay, grab that thing there. That's the what was that? The something for the for the new America, whatever thing. Okay, 9/11. Yeah, the Patriot Act. Let's get the. It's like Event 201 was about a coronavirus outbreak. But the thing is, it was held like the month before the coronavirus outbreak. Well, how's that possible? And it was the same players, the same people who are now the key players in it. And like I said yesterday, you don't just put together an Event 201, where you've got PowerPoints, documents, printed things, presentations, people who've come, traveled, travel arrangements, staying in hotels, making speeches, conferences. These things are prepared a year in advance, at least like 6 months or more, which means that this so-called 19 thing, now we're into 21, that means these guys were working on this thing. This is like over 2 years ago, maybe 3. Well, things don't last that long. They don't, yeah. So see, everything is wrong, and you got to get that through your skull. Your subconscious. See, you're subhuman when you live from your subconscious. You're a subhuman. All right? That's what you are. You're a subhuman. Now, if you're a conscious being, then you are you. You are a person. But if you're living around on your subconscious, that thing that they manipulate and control, right? You're a subhuman. All right? You're nothing. You're a non-player character. You're not even on the board of the board game and the game of life. You're not even on the board. And I don't mean board of directors. So Agenda 21 was the agenda by these people, the same people that Davos said. Who are they? Well, if you've ever watched Bloomberg TV or CNBC or Fox Business, any of the business stations, there's some other one, I think, too. That's a red carpet event that gets full coverage for like the whole week. There's people out there, oh, this stuff is conspiracy theory, right? Well, like, where are you living? Under a rock? What are you doing? Wake up to reality, man. Turn on, they just had it. The new, the World Economic Forum that was fair. It was just like a month or so ago. Got full coverage on TV. That Klaus guy, who's a throwback to like a early 20th century, part of the old of the party. The same party that Coca-Cola had Fanta with, and IBM supplied the concentration camp key punch cards, right? And that the Bush grandfather was involved with, and all these other U.S. companies were funding. They don't care about ideology. They don't care about fascism, National Socialism, communism, capitalism. They're not involved in the isms. They're the corporatocracy. They're the rulers of the world. In their mind, they're the masters of the universe. These are megalomaniacs. People don't get that. The very people who are supporting, who would disagree, who would like take offense with this video today, and already will have in its, when it's finally published. I mean, we're live now, but when it's published and disseminated through the various sources I disseminate this through, people who will be taking offense by that or shut it right off, like that, guys, like I say in the body snatchers, right? Those people are the very people that don't realize that that they're victims, and they will be victims of this. There's a garbage truck outside, in case something sounds weird. I noticed that what it does is it kind of muffles my voice or something. My voice in my headphones sounds okay right now, but I got a feeling it might not come off that way. So anyway, Agenda 21 was put together a long time ago. They call it Agenda 2030 now. Okay. So let's go back to Day After Tomorrow. That was 2004. So Agenda 21 was already put together, and that included this fake climate change thing. It was global warming. That's what they were calling it in Agenda 21, in its original documentation that they had pre-planned with all those other things that were on the shelf. Event 201, right? The coronavirus. That was all planned in the 90s. Okay. They have the documentation. These documents exist, right? The Patriot Act, right? All of these things were already put together through think tanks and through these planners and were discussed. And there were PowerPoint presentations and seminars and roundtable discussions about all this stuff. And then, over the years through Davos, the Bilderberg, you've heard about the Bilderberg group because they originally met at the Bilderberg Hotel or whatever resort, whatever that thing is, that stuff, all that stuff has come out, that's real. And like I say, it's celebrated on the financial media because these are the movers and shakers of the world. They're the players, the ruling elite. All right. So, I used to tell people this years ago, and, sometimes when I was into politics. See, I'm not into politics now. I don't care about left and right. That's like a whole game. That's like I said, that's two sides of a counterfeit fiat coin. And if you've got some cult of personality about one side or the other characters, man, are you being deceived? And you are a subhuman because your subconscious has been totally violated and distorted, indoctrinated, propagandized, and it's turned you into a subhuman, man. If you think that red states, blue states, Republican, Democrat, or a cult of personality of somebody, I used to talk one up, but I don't, I got into that. I mean, I was into politics. I wrote books about stuff. And like I said, I've changed, my political beliefs and leanings when I had them. I don't have them anymore at all. But over the years, I changed a couple of times, When I was in college, I was dating some girl who was, was far left, real far left, And at that time, it was like kind of men would be, men who supported, the women's movement and stuff like that. You were considered a feminist as well. So I was a full blown feminist. I supported all the left, far left ideology and candidates. Then I worked for Roy Cohn, who was, Matt, that guy was a character. And I voted for Ronald Reagan then. Then I came back, and then I wrote a book. One of my books, let's see if I can reach it. I hate doing this. Yeah, look at all these freaking books. This is like half of them. It's not even the whole batch. But like books, this book, Handbook for the Upheaval. Look what it says at the bottom. Living in Feudal America. Well, I was right about that. With climate change. Wage slavery. Well, I was right about corporate greed capitalism. But militarized police, domestic spying. So, I mean, half the stuff in here was fairly good. But it was basically, I mean, of course, some of these things, an eye for an eye will make the whole world blind, a Gandhi line. I was just looking to see for the date of this book. This is 2015. And if you go from 2015 here, which is post inconvenient truth, all right, and and you go to, well, I already transcended politics by the time I reached this book. But if you went to my, say later books, you would see this fluctuation. Because I have an open mind, and that's what you're supposed to have. You're not supposed to let your subconscious rule you. If you go to a shrink, they're going to tell you that subconscious is like sabotaging you, self-sabotage. That's like one of the, I don't know, if there's a top 10 of things that these psychotherapists or whatever you want to call them, psychoses or whatever that people suffer from who go to shrinks. Self-sabotage is way up there in the top, and that self-sabotage is brought about by the corporatocracy. I got coffee on my mustache. So, okay, so I changed. Everybody changes. I was a moron. Some people think, you're being weird. Well, yeah, I'm weird. What the heck? I'm entertaining. Okay,
Good thing that I don't have dangerous brain powers, or right now you'd be in 1,000 little pieces.
Here's one of my favorites.
I am your main connection to the switchboard of souls. I'm the magic man.
I'm your main connection to the switchboard of the soul. I'm your magic man. Hey, look, you got to have a sense of humor to get through this life. All right. It's crazy. I mean, I'm not looking for any pity, but, I'm a cancer survivor. All right. Knock on wood. Next PSA isn't until July, but I made it through the first year cancer free after the operation. But you got to have a positive attitude through this stuff. So anyway, you change, you open your mind, you have an open mind. You don't just follow in lockstep. And you certainly don't, look at that, that announcer, look how pretty she is, or look how handsome that guy is, or something. Or look at Tony, isn't his face gotten fat? So I don't think I like want to listen to him, believe him anymore because his cheeks look fat. Well, I was drinking a lot of beer. As Charlie Sheen said in the movie Wall Street when he watched it back, he goes, we used to drink beer every night because when I watch that movie, my face is so fat. It's true. That's what happens when you drink beer. You get like chipmunk cheeks. I have a video. It's called, if you go to my YouTube channel, Rockflux, there's a video. There's a quick aside. Critters. And I used to have this chipmunk. I had a rabbit friend and a chipmunk friend, and I feed birds and stuff in my backyard because I really like it. I really enjoy nature and all that stuff. And this one year, this is several years ago, a couple of years ago, I had a particularly, like a group of friends. Like they used to all hang out together. There's Mr. Bunny and Mr. Chipmunk, and then of course all the various birds, the cardinals and the house finches and the mourning doves, just, and they were, and I was out, I spent so much time outside, but I used to feed peanuts. I have a video of me feeding peanuts to the chipmunk, Mr. Chipmunk. I don't know if I'll have a Mr. Chipmunk this year or not. We'll see. I got a stack of peanuts though. They only cost $1 a bag. But what a chipmunk does is if I put out 3 or 4 peanuts, he'll like stuff them in his cheeks, and he looks like I look like now. But I got to the point where I realized, because they're, they have that mammalian brain, whatever. And I still, he'd be at the end of I have a walkway because my yard is long and thin. Okay. And I'd have the peanut in my hand and he'd do that. I hold it up and then I'd throw it and then he'd cautiously go grab it, put it in his mouth, into his cheek, and then go back to his place. Because that's what they do. They just hoard stuff. And I gradually would throw it so it would be closer and closer to me till eventually it got to the point where I was able to. I mean, I didn't feed him from my hand. I wasn't that stupid enough. You don't want to get bit by a chipmunk or something like that. But I got to the point where I could be like a foot away from him and I literally could hold the peanut and just like put it right down and he'd come over, and I have like a slow-mo video of that. Also, I think I have a video clip of when they were all hanging out together. The quality isn't the greatest, but it was like Mr. Bunny, Mr. Chipmunk, a bunch of birds feeding around where the bird feed had fallen from my bird feeder, and just one of those beautiful days. And I had a little fountain in my tiny pond that I dug out myself. That's only like a couple feet wide and a couple feet long, but I got a little solar fountain in it. Living in nature, growing my own food in the backyard, stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I'm as much an idiot. So when I say, when I get critical and stuff like that, even criticize that moron, use the word moron. About that. Well, we've all been idiots in our life. But I'm done with politics. And like I said, but I've changed. I've gone back and forth, sometimes depending on the girl I was sleeping with, or just the people I was hanging out with, or the fact that I allowed myself to be influenced, right? It's that cult of personality that whether you want to accept it or not, it's real. Right. You see some, I don't hold back on words, it's because I'm from a different, generation. You see some goddess, it's like they pick all this eye candy, from a guy's perspective, but women are exactly the same way. That's another one of those fallacies is, you get older in life, you realize it's like, women are worse than men when it comes, they just don't express it as much, right? Guys are more vocal about things, but like the women, it's like, They don't talk about it. It's like I used to always say, there's no difference between a guy walking with shirtless and a woman walking around shirtless. It's the exact same, the woman sees it the exact same way as a guy sees a naked, chest. That's like one of the biggest, funniest things in the world. But anyway, no, it's like, you look at these women and they pick these, news reader women and these TV personalities, and they're all eye candy. They're these little dolls, and they just, and you could see how, and they show just enough skin to, and it's like, but then, there's all these people are like that's sexist remarks. And I'm going like, you got to be kidding me. Well, then why don't you have a bunch of like, deformed people as your news anchors and as your top movie stars? They don't. It's even, I mean, even now where you have like the whole new thing is color, you got it, the white is bad. So you've got to find, anyone, you've got to find Asian, Latino, and blacks, to be the leads in all the TV shows, movies, and all that kind of stuff. But they managed to find these beautiful black women, these beautiful Latino women, and these beautiful Asian, girls. And they're, and just for another remark is there's nothing, the combination of Asian and Caucasian, that mix, man, that's a very good looking, genetic thing. Just like the combination of, white and black, and Latino, So I watch some of these shows because I don't really care. The color thing isn't a big deal to me. I look at it as a, it's kind of pathetic that, having lived through the 70s and watched, the civil rights movement succeed, watch the feminist movement succeed, Helen Gurley Brown and all that stuff, was dating this feminist, type of woman, but she had a nice body and she was a sex maniac. So it was fun. Which is probably why I became leaned left during that time. But the idea is that was all over by the time, I got hit the 80s and I got into the job thing. It's like, I hadn't thought about anything along the lines of race or man, woman, or any of that kind of stuff until they recently brought it up in like the past 5 or 10 years. I mean, that was pretty much over. If there were some like bigots and stuff out there, they were the same bigots that were probably around in the 90s or the 80s, just some leftover goofballs, on both sides. So, yeah, but I notice it's the same thing. So they got rid of the white, goddesses, so to speak, and they replaced them with black, Latino, and Asians, but they're still hot women. Okay. Hot women. And I'm sure women the same with the guys because, there's black dudes, Asian dudes, and, Latino dudes, also now in starring in TV shows and movies. But the point is, so it's like this whole pretension as if, it's not about color. The idea is it's still all eye candy. So when you see this hot babe, all right, or some girl sees this hot dude and he's saying climate change is like really bad, man, or something like that. They're like, they're thinking with their twat. All right. It's a good word. They're not thinking with their head. Certainly not their consciousness. So that's the game. And so the corporatocracy, the people in charge, the propagandists, the people who indoctrinate and control society, they know that. I mean, they've been selling potato chips and stuff like that for years, right? The bag of chips, right, hits the screen, the logo is here, and then the next screen is the woman's breasts, and then it's back to the logo appears in that spot. I was in the advertising agency business. I was a creative director for a while, right? I know all about that. Sex sells, right? That's not some conspiracy theory. And because it gets into people, and people, that's what they do. It's a sad state of affairs. It's a horrible, sad state of affairs, But I never, to me, I mean, I say this with all sincerity. All women are beautiful. I mean, everybody's beautiful. It's like that 70s song or something. I mean, unless you're evil, or like these corporatocracy people, evil, like the Jeff Bezoses and the Bill Gates and that Fauci guy. I mean, these guys are evil. They're like Bond villains times 10, They're really messing with people. So you had the day after tomorrow, to get back now off of that tangent, but this is fine. We got time. This is a second part of the show. If we were playing music, I would have this right now.
The now sound. Another hour of music power.
Sans the music, unfortunately. I wish I could play music, but they strike you. Can't play it because YouTube and Google don't pay their royalties. But anyway, so day after tomorrow comes out. The corporatocracy, the Davos set, the planners, the world planners, the ruling elite, all right? They already had everything planned. Agenda 21 was already pretty much in place in the 90s. You have to remember. Excuse me. That's a Tony Caravan show. It's a real show. Who cares? Beginning to the end anyway. Anyway, pardon me. This was the agenda for the 21st century. So it was already written in the 1990s. It was already outlined, mapped out. All right. It had already been worked out to the T, right? T's crossed, I's dotted, sort of thing. So in 2004, they already had the Patriot Act passed. Their whole 9/11 thing came and went. The wars, they had the Middle East wars going full swing, right? That whole disruption thing, military industrial complex that Eisenhower warned us about. Everything was going really sweet for the ruling elite. And so Hollywood is like, okay, you can, so Hollywood's doing its thing. And so they come out. So this movie comes out day after tomorrow, and the earth is frozen over, right? And, we can't have that, because part of Agenda 21 was something called global warming. So Al Gore immediately goes into production. They immediately come up with their comeback, which hit the theaters 2 years later, but was produced a year late, pretty much within a year or so. Like I say, it's a process of getting a movie released. I spent time in Hollywood and produced. You make a movie, but you got to get on the list, and put in place for distribution is a very complex thing. All right. And getting those prints out there and deciding when it's going to be. Are you going to release it on July? Things have changed now because we don't have the movie theater setup anymore. Not primarily. It's not the big box office thing it was. But I mean, you want to, is it going to be released July 4th used to be a big, release, big blockbuster release. The summer movies, sometimes Memorial Day, they get the jump on it. So this would be the summer movie that they could get milk, because people go on vacations. And so on the rainy day, they go to a movie, right? Think, common sense stuff. Nobody talks about common sense, like everyday things, but the everyday things are the reasons people do what people do. And those who control us, they think that way. They know that. Right? Or they'll have the fall one when the kids are back in college. Those would be the ones that would be the crazy, Porky's type of movies or something, that would be like big on campus and in college towns, right, in the fall. And of course, the Halloween horror movies come out around September and stuff, so they can milk that whole thing. And then of course your Christmas movies, but then Christmas itself, that time, Thanksgiving, Christmas, then they have the Christmas, they release the other big block. It's another big blockbuster time. And so, distribution, you have to fall, you gotta get in line and you have that scheduling stuff. That's part of distribution is the name of the game. It's the name of the game in music too. All right. Doesn't matter. If you don't have distribution, you got nothing. So Al Gore comes out with this climate change thing, and basically every single thing he said in that movie was a bold-faced lie. And it came out in 2006, which is 15 years ago. All right. There was a follow-up, I believe. It was more lies. And everything, when I say everything in that movie, every single thing in that movie was a bold-faced lie. I mean it. And over those past 15 years, everything he said has been proven to be a lie. There will be no snows on Kilimanjaro, right? Some giant charts and stuff, exaggerated chart numbers. So he needs a ladder to go up and point some. Look, 0.004% CO2 in the atmosphere is a good thing. I'd like us to have 0.005 or 0.006. CO2 greens the planet. It's a greenhouse gas. They pump it into greenhouses. That's why it's called a greenhouse gas, because it helps things grow. So you have better crop yields, and the better the greening, the more green the planet is, the more the plants help us out. So we not only will get better crop yields, which means more food to feed the planet, the hungry, but a more rich oxygen atmosphere, which is what we really need. And, one of the things with this plague right now is people who one of the things is people have low oxygenated blood, right? It's interesting. We need more CO2. But anyway, CO2 isn't the problem. This planet isn't warming, it's cooling. We're entering a grand solar minimum. All right. The sun is in charge of the temperature. Okay. The climate and the weather. All right. Because, you'll get these people who argue about that. Well, you're right about the sun giving heat. And nighttime, it is cooler at night. So the sun does affect the weather, but it doesn't affect the climate. What are you talking about? How much money did you get from, somebody who's involved in geoengineering, or from corporations, or from Bill Gates, or somebody who's got some foundation that's basically a slush fund or a scam or a money laundering operation so that they can feed money from that foundation into a company that they make profit on? That's how that works, That's how that plague thing works. Like I said yesterday, sorry, the seat. It's just a new padding and a new way of dealing with this old chair. And I thought this would help, but I'm going to have to still make some more adjustments and refinements. So, that whole thing, what a laugh. What a laugh. but so obvious in your face, right? Their comeback, and then the media jumps on it. And then they changed it from global warming because the stuff didn't come, the planet, suddenly, they weren't getting the results that Al Gore had said. So they changed the terminology used by the protesters, right? And these agitators, these activists, right? Climate activists. And they changed it to climate change, from global warming to climate change. So they could say that, oh, a big snowstorm is caused by, climate change. But to get back to, let's rotate back to an earlier part of Texas and Darlin. For all those darlings down in Texas. The thing is, when you have storms of the century, aren't you tired of hearing? Think about how many times, if you're over a certain age, just think back, and you know it, and you can't count, but just, what I'm trying to say. Think back how many times you've heard the word storm of the century, on television or from somebody, right? Think about it. Like every year, sometimes multiple times a year for 40 years. It's always the storm of the century. How could it be the storm of the century twice or three times a year for 40 years, or for a person's entire lifetime, right? It's a storm of the century. Hurricanes have increased. They've become more deadly, right? More deadly hurricanes in recent years, since climate change. CO2 has jumped than in previous years. Same with tornadoes. And I touched on this the other day. No, that's not true. More deadly tornadoes in recent years. No, there's a simple solution to that. And the answer to that. Not in your subhuman subconscious, self-sabotage, indoctrinated, propagandized brain. All right. The moron subhuman aspect, just remember, every moron can any given time, stop being a moron. No, you're not, you don't have to be a moron. Just stop looking at the eye candy up there and saying, man, look at those gazungas, look at those melons on that babe, or look at her face, look at the skin, the cut of that dress, or look at her legs. And then these so-called reporters and these actresses, and they're like just parading themselves around like Barbie dolls, and then they're into some social justice movement, picket sign type of thing. It's like, come on, man. Don't be such a hypocrite. Why don't you put on a nun's outfit? If that's what you believe, instead of, and doing that. And these people looking Google-eyed at it, and I say the girls do the same thing with the guy ones, the guy reporters and politicians and entertainers and, Davos set. No, the simple solution is forget this storm of the century and more deadly storms and all that stuff. I've lived long enough to see crazy storms in my childhood, and have documented it by talking with family members and other people who agreed and said, yeah, you're right. Snow, we couldn't open the back door of our house. The snow was piled up. Couldn't get the garage door open because the snow was over the garage. The car was almost completely buried over. Numerous times. Nor'easters. Hurricane Agnes, power out for like a week. Floods everywhere. Johnstown flooded 3 times. before CO2 was higher. In fact, the last Johnstown flood was the cover of Time magazine was in the same era where the cover of Time magazine had a picture, cartoon image. I showed it once on this show. Archie Bunker, who was the big TV guy, it showed him on his chair shivering, and the headline was, is the earth freezing over, or something like that. That was where they were in the 70s, you see, because they were more on the science. The influence factor hadn't come into the universities and the academics yet, and the media hadn't been totally taken over and controlled yet. No, so, and at that time, and leading straight up in through the 80s even, okay, before, but, by the 80s, Florida had started to be mega populated because of Disney World. Disney's buying up and the building up of like Orlando and then the Gulf Coast and all those other things, right? But in the 60s and the 70s, the 50s, 60s, and the 70s, Florida was like just swampland, And those that did live in certain areas like Miami or in the Keys, the various keys, like I always talk about that movie Key Largo with Humphrey Bogart, Sidney Greenstreet and Lauren Bacall. Watch that sometime. There was a hurricane came up during that movie. That's what that movie was. That was a movie from like the 40s. And they put the storm shutters out because that's what people used to have down there. The few who lived there had storm shutters because that's how bad the storms were, and the storms happen now. Now people have these things that look like shutters. They're just screwed to the side of the windows for like an aesthetics, right? An architectural feature, right? They don't close. And they build these houses out of sticks, like toothpicks. It's like the Three Little Pigs. The wind huffs and puffs and blows these houses down. But the point is, and the same with the Wizard of Oz. Remember, that was a tornado. And those books were written in the late 1800s. And Wizard of Oz was like a 1920s. Something. In fact, I keep talking about the Wizard of Oz. Let's see exactly what year that was. Wizard of Oz. 1939. Okay. So that movie came out in 1939. So 80 years ago. But the books were written 100 years ago. Oh, well, no, 120 years ago or something like that. And that was about a tornado in Kansas. Right? So what I'm trying to get at is that there were storms and hurricanes since the beginning of time. All right. But nobody lived there. And the reason a lot of people didn't die and there wasn't like $1 billion worth of damage in Florida or in the Gulf Coast, right? Or even in Hurricane Alley, because it wasn't populated. Again, the population in the 20s on the United States was around 100 million. Okay. By the 70s, it was about 200 million. And in the 2000s, it was over 300 million. Okay. So within 100 years, the population increased in the United States from 100 million to 300 million. Okay. It didn't double, it tripled. And so all of these areas, and people love the coast, living in coastal areas, the Gulf Coast, the Florida coast, so-called Space Coast. I lived in the Gulf Coast for about a year or two. I forget how long it was exactly. Sorry for scratching my nose. Yeah, it was nice down there. Too humid though. Humid. And I lived through, and I have a video. I got to put it up because I have a clip of it, but it's not on YouTube. But I actually did film through my window a tropical storm one time that came through where I was living. You can see the palm trees going. And then you get to the eye of the storm, and then it's all quiet. And then the palm trees go the other way. It's really weird, because of the way the thing passes through. And I got that on camera. And the whole thing didn't last like it lasts like a very short period of time, minutes, you know. And after it, I walked the streets. I told this story before, but it bears repeating. And, you know, and there were like all these palms down and signs from stores, people's like awnings. And, you know, I just walked to the convenience store and was out assessing the damage myself. The people down there are used to it. I keep hitting this thing and it pops up this something by accident. So, yeah. So, you know, that just totally, you know, blows their argument out of the water. You know, if you've got 3 times the population, and we're talking about tripling in by the hundreds of millions, okay? Hundreds of millions. And that people prefer, and prime real estate is coastal real estate. So of course you're going to have billions of dollars of damages and losses of life by these storms that used to go through areas that were just swamplands before. Nobody lived there, or the people who did live there. And there weren't TV stations there because there weren't big cities, you know. Orlando didn't exist. You know, basically Disney, I mean, created that whole, you know, giant area. I remember going down there years ago. I took a train from Philadelphia, sleeper train. From Philadelphia, my sister lived down there. From Philadelphia to Orlando, you could take a sleeper train. And, you know, and that was cool. That was pretty cool. You know, it's a tiny little thing. You got a little bed, but you got your own little, you know, even your own bathroom in your bathroom, but, you know, it's your self-sufficient. So you can crash or just fold the bed thing and just look out the window. Anyway, so I got in Orlando, and from there I hopped a bus to get to, I was going over towards Tampa. And I was just, my mind was blown because I had, when I was very younger, a bunch of us who had summer jobs down at the shore, we just jumped in the car towards the end of the summer and we drove down to Fort Lauderdale. We, you know, we just wanted to go to Florida. I don't know, some guy had the car and said, "Hey, let's go." And it was like 4 of us hopped in the car. Like we were hungover, probably wish we didn't even do it at, you know, halfway through it because it was a long drive. It's like a 20 some hour drive. And I remember we finally got to Daytona. Maybe it was Daytona Beach or Fort Lauderdale. I forget which one, but maybe both, or, you know, or one of them where you could just pull your car right on the beach. And we just pulled the car on the beach and we just like, everybody just jumped out the doors and just crashed, laid down on towels and just like fell asleep because we were so tired from that trip. But even then, remember, that was the 70s, late 70s. That would have been the end of the 70s. And, you know, when the population was still only around 200 million. And then later, you know, going down there, it wasn't the 2000s when I did or was it? It was getting close to the 2000s. So we probably were up to about 300. So there probably was an extra 100 million people or close to it by that time I went down in this, you know, in this train and was in this bus and realized and go like, wow, this is like a major city. You know, the development was everywhere, you know, and the highways, the roads, the billboards. It was like you were driving and, you know, on your way entering into a city. And so, of course, you know, you get, you know, these were areas that weren't developed, that was swampland. So that like throws that completely out the window. All right. You know, this is about day after tomorrow. I realized I went a little too long on that. Okay. But let's just review briefly. Okay. Al Gore, all right, comes back because he has to defend Agenda 21, which is now Agenda 2030. Okay. because they got sidetracked. They got pushed back by reality. Okay. Al Gore has to come out, is forced to put this movie out to combat the day after tomorrow, the idea that the earth could freeze over. So because they wanted to push the global warming agenda, which is really big time now. They're still pushing it. They're still pushing it. It's like ridiculous. It's totally it's a fraud. It's a complete 100% fraud. All right. This whole CO2 thing and this carbon-based nonsense. It's just a fraud. All right. It's a scam. It's a money-making deal. And for global domination and depopulation. So that happens. All right. We know these storms, the only reason these storms seem stronger or take life or cost billions of dollars is because there was nobody there before, or those that were there. And there certainly weren't cities that had their own television stations and were network affiliates and stuff that could have coverage. You didn't even have the Weather Channel. Okay. That thing when did the Weather Channel start? In the 80s or something? I mean, Ted Turner was the guy when CNN, came on air. Let's see. New window. Weather Channel. I have to watch how I type this. When did the Weather Channel start? Okay. May 2nd, 1982, Atlanta, Georgia. Okay. When did CNN start? June 1st, 1980. That's what I thought. So remember, when you had cable TV, it was Turner who basically invented, cable TV, the big cable channel thing. Prior to that, it was just a burgeoning thing. It was like kind of FM radio was in the 60s. In the 60s, FM radio was like talk radio, even though it was stereo and it was cool and all that stuff. It was like mainly it was talk, right? Because AM stations were like the things that were like, doing, all this cool, fun stuff like this. Well, we'll just repeat this one.
The now sound.
That was AM radio was the well produced with the DJs and all that kind of stuff. And then it flopped. And then eventually FM, took over. All right. Well, it was the same with cable. Cable was coming along, but it was like Turner. And so the Weather Channel wasn't around until 1982. And at that point, in fact, the guy who started the Weather Channel is one of the most outspoken guys against this global warming scam. You could watch his videos. The guy comes out and he basically debunks the whole thing. The guy who started the Weather Channel. That's a fact. You could go research that on yourself, on your own, independently. So there was nobody, all right, prior to the 80s, standing there and the wind blowing and they've since then they've been debunked and exposed so many times how they position themselves in some spot, some weird windy spot or some weird place where there's a puddle, but the reality is the rest of the area is dry. It's all show business. Remember, television is show business. It's scripted, it's sound, lights, producers, right? It's 100% showbiz. It's a production. All right. The news is a production. The Weather Channel is a production. All right. But you didn't have that prior to the 80s. You just simply didn't have that reporting on location. And you didn't have these network affiliates in towns because those towns, they were too small, Or if they were, it didn't matter. There were a tornado or a hurricane could come through a certain area and it would cause minimal damage and minimal loss of life, if any, because there just simply weren't a million people living there. I don't know. I'm going to keep doing this. Let's see. population of Orlando, for example. 280,000 people in 2019. In 2019. Well, let's see. And it's been an upward, increase. It looks progressively. I don't see if this chart goes back to the 70s or something. I don't want to dig into that. You do that. Okay? So you've got over 250,000 people just, living in Orlando, and of course that's sprawl, that whole area. And then you've got Sarasota, and all the suburbs of Tampa. And like I say, that what they call the Space Coast, right? And, and how Miami just like exploded, and then all along the Gulf Coast. It's just overly developed. And, so you just simply, so the storm thing, forget it. And when they talk about nor'easters, man, forget that too. Jeez. Nor'easters have been happening forever. And it had nothing to do with CO2. Like I said, when they had Archie Bunker on the cover saying the planet was cooling, I was a kid, and we were having brutal winters, brutal. I was shoveling snow all the time at my house. Every winter it was like shovel, snow plows, because I walked to school. So I know, I mean, you couldn't get a ride to school if you wanted to in some of those days. Winters were cold. So, it's like, give me a break, man. And then they don't really understand El Nino and La Nina, like that whole concept. And most important, they don't understand the weakening magnetic field. I want to finish this off. There's enough time to finish this off so that that I'm true to the title card. All right. Which basically says, a double check, closer to reality than you might think. All right. Okay. So everything I've said so far should have given you an idea. It's a firsthand experience. Somebody who's lived through it, reality. And I've been to those places. See, that's the thing. Remember, people out there today, they see a meme, they see a post, they see a tweet, right? They see a soundbite, they see a headline on their little news app, right? It goes viral, and suddenly a couple million people, right, are all like parroting this thing, right? And then these teachers in these schools are teaching these kids, climate change is real. The world's going to end. We're going to be toast by the year 2030 if we don't get rid of fossil fuels, or this plague. Yeah, this is the word, Hey, man, it was a bad, catchy flu last year. Whatever's going on now is either a complete and total utter fraud, or, as I don't know the answer to this, or it's a freaking bioweapon. And I think they need to fess up, because if it's a bioweapon, I want to get my injection. All right. And maybe that's why they did develop these funky things. Okay. Because they're not this isn't a normal, shot in the arm. Okay. And they came around real fast, and they work totally different than like the standard whatevers. Okay. That you got as a kid. But, fess up. Let us know. Seems to me that more and more is pointing to the fact that this could well be a bioweapon. Otherwise, it's just a catchy flu, and it's over by now. It's got it. So I don't know. I think it's a bioweapon, personally, by the communist Chinese. I'm seeing more evidence that supports that than some magical thing, flu bug, cold flu bug that's, resistant to what? UVB rays, even though CDC came out, or the WHO or somebody came out just last week and said this thing is 6 times more susceptible to UV rays than previously mentioned, meaning that the thing's toast if it's exposed to the sun. So in other words, if you go out in your backyard or you go to the beach in your bikini, right? You're clean, baby. You're clean. So get out there and get that tan that body of yours. That'll also kill all those germs. But anyway, enough of that. My obsession with that. Yeah. Anyway, so the magnetic field of the earth has weakened. The magnetic field of the sun has weakened. All right. That allows more cosmic rays in. And we have anomalies happening around the earth. There's a South Atlantic anomaly where basically there seems to be a patch where like anything could get through. So you will experience we're experiencing some very weird things happening right now because of, long-term cyclical solar cycles. Okay. Which is, using the word cycle and cyclical in the same sentence is ridiculous. But I mean, long-term solar cycles, the magnetic field concept. All right. And they affect like the jet stream. All right. And we also have this migration. Do you know that the magnetic South Pole is no longer at the South Pole, is no longer even on the continent of Antarctica right now. It is actually moved off of the continent of Antarctica. That's a fact. And the North Pole, the magnetic North Pole, all right, when you have a compass, and I have one over here somewhere, if I can find it. Where is it? Does anybody remember? Like, if people don't, what the heck? Okay. Let's see if I can. This lighting here sucks. See that? That's a compass. All right. Now, obviously, it's not going to point to the north from there, but out of curiosity, I'll set it down. If you have a compass, you put the red arrow at the north. So, yeah, that's right. So the North Pole, I just wanted to show you a compass. A lot of people don't know what a compass is anymore, because people are just out of touch with reality. Anything real, so though you might have a compass app on your smartphone or something like that, but who knows what that's based on, because it's not magnetic. It might be based on some kind of GPS or a chip or something, some triangularization of cell towers or some idiotic thing. What I'm getting at is this. I'm going to try to finish this in the next 15 minutes. The magnetic North Pole is moving towards Siberia. All right, has moved towards that direction. So you have jet streams, okay, that normally are just like kind of these little wavy things. In the north, they go this way. In the south, they go the other way. All right. And when they say there's a polar vortex, you've heard that term. There's a dip in the jet stream. Okay, when there's a dip in the jet stream, think about it. This is the north, the cold air. All right, and this is the south. All right, warmer temperatures because of, that's how the world is. The closer you get to the equator, the hotter it is. And so, and the higher up, towards the top you get, the colder it is. Because remember, I'm talking about the magnetic North Pole as opposed to the physical North Pole. All right. The Arctic Ocean is still frozen over. I mean, I know people that are still, they have, annually lead tours to the North Pole, right? So the so-called imaginary North Pole, you know, that thing, that line through the planet, right? Which is why we have the seasons and something called precession, right? Which are the grand cycles of the earth, all right? Which also play into all of this stuff. We've got axial tilt, precession, right? The magnetic north and south poles, the physical pole, you know, all that kind of stuff. And then you've got these jet streams. And so if a jet stream dips, that means if it's dipping like that and it's, you know, so that means that the cold air is being brought down, okay, to an area that normally would not have that particular temperature. Okay. And those things are all caused by these magnetic disruptions. All right. And cyclical, and some of this stuff is cyclical. Like there's all kinds of crazy stuff going on. Weakened magnetic fields allows different cosmic rays in. You know, for the most part, most people have been experiencing colder weather, right? Like I've said before, a lot of the stations that report when they say, "Oh, the temperature is hotter," right? This goes back to the same thing. You know, in the 70s, you know, you didn't have as big a jets, as many airports, right? As many reporting stations that were creating. How, you know, they take the weather from where? From airports primarily, and in cities and universities and stuff. Well, these places are the hottest places on the planet. You know, cities generate their own heat because it's this high concentration of buildings, people, parking lots, cars, right? HVAC systems. What are airports? Tarmacs, right? Asphalt, jet engines, right? These are where like they have the temperatures, you know, where the temperatures come from, right? Universities, next in buildings, universities, high concentration, parking lots. You know, I've seen these things, you know, they've got their little weather stations on the side of the meteorologist building, you know, at a university. You know, it's not like they have them out in the middle of nowhere or in your own backyard, because I know it. See, I'm a gardener. I'm a guy who's outside every day, who's keeps like journals and stuff of temperatures and stuff. I've held this up in previous videos. I just threw it out the other day, and I think it was garbage day, so I don't think it's here. Yeah, today's garbage day, so it's gone. I forgot. But I used to print it out. I'm not going to do it now. But I'll watch the weather from year to year, and I watch how they change it and stuff. And I've noticed, you know, it's cold. It's gotten colder. And I watch other people who report it. So that's another factor that's just not being talked about. Okay. And so everything you know is wrong. You're being lied to by people who have an agenda, and that what they have a name for it. They call it Agenda 2030. And their goal is basically global governance. And they want to eliminate, see, the US became independent, all right, through energy independent over the past several years, which means that we didn't have to have Middle Eastern wars because they were all about oil. We didn't need China. We could defeat China. We could bring manufacturing back. We could produce steel and glass and all these other basic manufacturing ingredients and have factories because we didn't have to import oil, so we could compete in the market. So what did China do? It releases a bioweapon on the world because China had planned by 2019 to be the world's leading economy. But the US had basically moved so far ahead that China was on its way out. And the US was starting to rebuild manufacturing jobs. and rebuild plants, and companies were moving back into the US. And so these globalists, the Davos set, the World Economic Forum people, said, oh, we can't have this because we can't have a United States, become, some kind of like, have this Democrat republic, exist or get back to where it was. Because I mean, we've been, Western civilization has collapsed more or less in recent years, decades really. But and the US has, been on a pretty much a downward spiral. But now it's pretty much, toast because of what, what they're doing. And this idea is, so they want to eliminate, they have this, want to push this false narrative of, carbon based fuels bad, because they basically want to, cut the US off at the knees, right? And they don't want manufacturing here. They don't want the quality of life. They don't want independence of people. They want the corporatocracy wants to rule again. It's the old world order. It's not like those people with the ones that were the conspiracy theories talking about the new world order and all that stuff. No, those people were wackos and are still. No, this is the old world order. This is the Davos set. This is the World Economic Forum, the Great Reset. These are the people you can see on Bloomberg and Fox Business and CNBC, right? The financial networks who don't hide this idea. They want to have global governance. All right. The corporatocracy is in charge. They don't want governments, elected officials anymore. That's why they're disrupting all this electoral nonsense too. All right. It's to get rid of that. There will be no more. I mean, elections are just, they're feel-good events for people that are into the cult of personality, right? Politics is pop culture. It's their life. It's their purpose in life to spend 2 hours on Twitter, arguing with people or watching or making these YouTubers. Did I say it yesterday? One of these YouTubers I used to follow, I can't even look at him now. Another one just bought, my wife just got a brand new Jeep, such and such, whatever, some $50,000 or $60,000 brand new thing. It's like, weren't you this like, excuse me. I was about to sneeze, so blowing the nose is better than sneezing on air. Because when I sneeze like 5 times in a row. Some people are like that. That's me. I'm one of those people. I don't have like a hachoo. It's like, but another one of these YouTube so-called people who've made millionaires, and all they do is all their episodes are the things they're buying, right? And they started out like building their own house from scratch and being these DIY type people and all that crazy stuff. It's really sickening, man. I'll tell you, it's sickening. So the takeaway is that, look, you could go check out David Dubine, Adapt 2030, Suspicious Observers, Ben Davidson, Doug Votes, Diehold Foundation, the Electric Universe, even though they won't deal so much with climate as as an alternative to some of the physics that people are falling, that they believe in, as far as astrophysics. But the idea is that mostly everything you know is wrong, and what you don't know, you don't know. And I have 2 shirts on TonyCaravanLive.com, and one of them is there. I wore the other one. If you watch yesterday's video, I also have this crazy shirt with my little, iconic face that's, from years ago, but it's the one I use. It's the I don't know. It's the iconic face. I use it on my my music and in my books and websites and stuff like that. Just a thing, it's a thing, you know. So check that out. Check out greatsolarstuff.com. Be prepared. And like I say, it's not enough to survive. You got to thrive. And so, try to limit your exposure to the corporatocracy. These fakers, phonies that are feeding you such a line. When I say, the reason I say everything you know is wrong, I mean, it could be mostly everything you know is wrong. Okay. But the reason I say everything you know is wrong is because it almost is. I mean, they are bombarding people with such a high degree of lies, deceptions, falsehood, misdirection, diversion, it's just they've co-opted things. It's just completely out of control. So yeah, everything you know is wrong, right? And what you don't know, you don't know. Don't let somebody tell you something. Remember, what I'm giving you is firsthand information. All right? It's not something I saw, right? And even though I'll go to the website, I only use the internet for matter of factual things, like a date. What did I do? I went to the internet like 3 or 4 times during this video. For what purpose? For a date, a specific date, a start date, something that's not, an opinion, an editorial, a headline, a tweet, right? I wanted to know, when did CNN start? Okay, it was 1980. When the Weather Channel? 1982. When was this movie? That was Day After Tomorrow, 2004. When was the Al Gore thing? That was like 2006. All right. Matter of factual. I will look and I'll use research for matter of factual things like a date, a specific date. But I won't even use Wikipedia for like information, because that's all messed with. That's part of the whole game they're playing. That's revisionist. Revisionist history. It's like what they teach in schools to the kids. They've got these kids tormented, tortured, and the generation that's come up, they don't know everything they know is wrong. And that's why this is an unpopular show. And why I'm probably going to discontinue it and just get into gardening videos and stuff to help you get through what's about to happen between now and the next 25 years. We have to be prepared. Volcanoes are starting to erupt with greater frequency. Okay? That alone also is putting ash into the atmosphere, which means that's a natural way the planet cools too. And then you have like this Beaufort area up there, that one of the biggest reservoirs of fresh water, all right, that's up between Greenland and Canada. It's dumping water into the North Atlantic, and that the conveyor, they used to call it the conveyor. They have a new word for it, but if you think of the Day After Tomorrow, I think they called it the Atlantic Conveyor back then too. But there's a new name for it. It's an abbreviation thing. I don't know what it is. I don't care what they call it. It's the thing that allowed why England isn't frozen over. Okay. It brings warm air up from the south and it just moves down. It has to do with the salinity of the ocean water, fresh water, like, in other words, salt water sinks, fresh water stays to the top. And this process of sinking, and this causes, and currents and flow, right? Well, anyway, that thing's been slowing down now for several years. And that was the basis of the Day After Tomorrow, was that it just stopped, right? Well, it doesn't seem like it's going to necessarily stop, but that's slowing down, in addition to all this other crazy stuff that I started to talk about. All right. The cycle, axial tilt, precession, the migration of the magnetic poles, the solar cycles, grand solar minimum, right? All of this stuff, the South Atlantic anomalies, and grand cycles. And the fact that, that all this other stuff they're feeding you about CO2 and storms and stuff is just a fraud because there weren't people there before, and that, has nothing to do with anything. CO2 greens the planet. The more, the better. All right. And there are these guys that I've alluded to, and others have the charts, have the data, the ice core data, the tree ring data, right? The archaeological dig data. Okay. That everything is wrong. Everything they're telling you is wrong. And what you don't know, because if you're getting your information from the internet, apart from, say, just a date or something, that's bull, man. That's like viral, opinionated, propagandized, indoctrination crap. And if you fall for that, man, are you a sucker? And you're threatening your life and the life of your children and your children's children. So, greatsolarstuff.com. Like I say, said before, get some. All right? Get some. Your life may depend on it. Anyway, this is the beginning of the end. So I don't know exactly where we're going to go from here. My next video may or may not be a video like this. It may be more of a garden video. You need to figure out ways to get through this stuff and get your life together and stop being exposed to this. I didn't even get into the idea of crop failures. We're in inflation, right? Runaway inflation. The idea that interest rates are on the rise. Joblessness is going to increase like way, way up. Right. All these things are happening right before your eyes, but you're not paying attention to it because you got a $1,400 check, or you're unemployed and you're sitting at home and people are just playing video games, watching Netflix or watching whatever the heck, or watching stupid network TV and, binge watching CNN or Fox or whatever their stupid, preferential politics as pop culture or cult of personality is. It's all nonsense, man. They're two sides of a counterfeit fiat coin, man. It's the same thing. They're messing with your heads. All right? Because they have an agenda, and it's called Agenda 2030. And they have a thing called the Great Reset. And they're bringing back neo-feudalism, and you are just cattle on a tax farm. That's what you are to them. Okay? That's all you are. You're just cattle on a tax farm. They don't care about you. They pretend they do. They don't care about you. The money's going to run out by this fall. So you got time. You got about 6 months to start getting your act together. But between 6 and 18 months, man, this whole house of cards is falling apart, and it has nothing to do with politics. Nothing to do with politics. And you got to watch out because there's some game being played with that plague. And the guys who are pushing it and were profiting on this thing, they're depopulation people. They're on record as being like they want the earth to be depopulated. Okay. So you got to watch out for that. And then this whole industry of testing is a $91 billion industry now, testing. And the vaccine industry is probably worth, we're talking about $1 trillion industries come up around this. The corporatocracy is in the process of a major money grab now, probably bigger than a transfer of wealth than happened in 2008 or with the banking, the whole thing with the real estate crash and stock market and bailouts, too big to fail and all that stuff. And then like there was one in the 90s, and then of course going back to the SNL thing when they got rid of most of the local savings and loans. So this is the corporatocracy. That's what's going on. You don't know that. See, everything you know is wrong, or you don't know what you don't know. Nobody knows this stuff because nobody's talking about it. And the people who talk about some of these things, they're wackos. They are conspiracy theorists because they don't tell you it like as it is firsthand. They just like read articles and stuff they found on the internet or from these mainstream legacy news people who are lying sacks of, you know what? Remember, if you don't experience it firsthand, all right, you don't know that it's true. So what I'm telling you is what I know to be true because I have spent a life traveling, researching, and being in these places, studying these things, all right, monitoring, journaling, logging daily this stuff, all right, talking to the firsthand people, not reading something from an internet or news article or a post or a tweet or even a YouTuber. All right. You have to, so just get your acts together. I'm done. All right. I'm done trying to tell people this. I don't know if YouTube is throttling me somehow that I get 2 views and it's probably me and a friend of mine or me and a couple friends of mine when I have 3 or 4 views, or some random person. But there's some game being played here. So I'm tired of it. Ain't going to happen anymore. I'll be doing some garden stuff and more educational things to help you out. I may come on from time to time if I have something to say. But, in the meantime, thank you. That's what you should be doing. But no, I'm gone.
Good morning.
Good morning. Have a great day. Wish you all the best of luck and success. Remember, don't be a subhuman. Don't let your subconscious rule your conscious life. Use your 5 senses and see the world in reality, not through the filter of this stupid paperweight, all right, or social media. Wake up. Your life depends upon it. If you have kids, your kids' lives depend upon it, and their unborn children's lives depend upon it. Wake up. Wake up to reality. Don't be a fool. Cheers.